Okay, we are live. Hi, guys.
Hi
Hi.
there.
Hi, Prana Boosters. Welcome to our show today. I'm excited to have with me my two amazing featured Prana Boosters who are joining me in a conversation about mindful parenting. And today's topic is mindful language, which is a very, very big topic, very close to all our hearts, I know. First, we have Heather of wiseinside.com and the author of this book, How to Raise a Happy Child and Be Happy Too. Hi, Heather.
Hi.
Nice
I
to
love
see
when you hold up the book.
I have to hold it. It's so heavy. It's so beautiful. And we have Eric of oneawesomedad.com. Hi, Eric.
Hi there. Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
You're welcome. I'm so glad to have you guys. And before we get started, I was just going to read my little message. I have to find it, actually. I actually forgot where my message is. Well, that's good. Then I'll actually just have to, oh, I have it. Okay. This is just what I want to tell our listeners that I like to say beforehand, so I couldn't find it, and I have so many notes in my phone. I'm very excited to share all of our experiences and all of our knowledge with everybody, and I'm grateful to share space with both of you, as always, and I just want to share that our mutual intention here today and always is for other parents to hear our conversation, and maybe it sparks a thought or an idea or lets them know what we do in our families, and a lot of our parenting styles are very new and, not always socially acceptable yet because they're really new. So I just want to have these conversations publicly so that other parents don't feel so alone. Also, I'm a huge advocate for feeling your way through parenting. So as you listen, I want to teach people to use their own intuition and do what feels best for them and their families, and we are not telling people what to do. We are simply sharing what we do and inspiring them of what's possible. So that is what I call the legal disclaimer for the show. So mindful language, I have a quote that I love that I share when I did a workshop on mindful language. I love this quote, which says, "The biggest challenge in communication is the illusion that it has taken place." And that is by George Bernard Shaw. I think one of the biggest things about mindful language is the intention to have good communication with your loved ones and with your family, right?
Right.
And it's pretty challenging,
Yeah.
even with people that speak the same language, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, it's challenging. It's challenging for communication with each other, let alone our kids. I think just spouses, friends, family, I think communication is the biggest challenge so that we are heard and are understood and understand each other. I think that's the biggest challenge that I've come across.
Yes, and the reason I'm so passionate about it is because at the core of how we live and how we parent and how we actually have been in a relationship so long, my husband and I, as you guys know, we're going on 21 years, has been really to learn how to communicate. And I can tell you, I went to school for communication. I mean, I have a degree and a paper that says I know how to communicate. Supposedly, that's what they told me. But everything I learned about communication was on my own and was in partnership with the person that I was, communicating with most. Then once we had children, learning that people have different communication styles. So, making sure that we actually learn what everybody's style of communication was. And I think at the core, what I wanted to talk about first was that, for us, my biggest focus was nonviolence. I wanted to make sure that when we were talking to each other, we were not harming each other. So even if we were angry or having emotions, we were not harming each other. And now I can quote movies from the 80s and the 90s. I don't know when they were actually out, but I pretty much know a lot of Eddie Murphy Raw. I know
Okay.
I know a lot of very very inappropriate words, very inappropriate jokes. And, I really started to wake up when I had children, and I really realized that what I said really mattered, that it was really powerful. My words had so much power. They had the power to build people up, tear people down, miscommunicate, and be really unhappy. And so my biggest focus was that I really wanted to make sure that we felt comfortable, first and foremost within our home, but whatever we learned within our home could extend outside of our home. So when I did become a parent, that's when I started to study language and everything like that, much more deeply. And nowadays I have another Sanskrit word, kind of like prana Sanskrit, and this is an old Hindu word, and the word is ahimsa. And that word is actually like one of our core values, and it actually means nonviolence. And it means to not injure, so to not injure another. So when we're talking about language, you guys know you can say something and you can harm somebody pretty much for life. Like, they can actually really take it to heart, especially our children, what they hear from us, and that'll be in, playing a tape in their head for the rest of their lives, what we say to them. So this topic is really important to me, and I'm trying to figure out where to start because I have so much to say about it. My family noticed, my extended family really noticed that I shifted the way that I spoke, and they were like, "Oh, that's interesting. You're not using that word. You're not talking like that. You're not, you're talking different. You're not saying certain words." And then I would actually ask them not to say certain words. So I started to actually ask other people to be accountable in front of my children and, be mindful of what they were talking about. So I'll just give you an example, and then I want to hear from you guys. One of the biggest examples that I can remember, I have so many, I just had to pick one. I remember we were at a family dinner, and I was the only one with 2 little kids at the dinner. So it was everybody in our family, which were all adults, and everybody was used to talking the way that they would talk. And my kids were very little, and they started to talk about the Titanic. And they started to talk about, dying and just all sorts of stuff, and stuff that, I actually don't even want to say it on here, like what everybody was talking about. But when we say Titanic, we all know kind of what happened, right? And what goes on. And I would just say to them, I'm not sure this is a story that the kids need to hear right now, and instead, my kids just left. Like, they left the room, and we put them at a table, like a kid's table in another room, and everybody was so, like, offended, like, why are you moving them? And there's nothing wrong, and we didn't say anything wrong. And I was trying to teach people it's not about being wrong or it's not about being right, but it's about having awareness of who's around you and what they might be hearing and the context in which they might be hearing it. So that was just kind of one example that I wanted to throw out there, and I want to kind of get your, your feelings on it. I don't know who wants to start. You can raise your hand, Heather or Eric. I don't know who wants to start. But
go, Eric, go.
Okay, Eric, so I'd love to hear a little bit of your thoughts.
I nominate Eric.
The topic of mindful language.
Sure. So for me, this is really a topic that I can get pretty juiced up about because I think for me, I lived for a long time with a real unawareness of just the power of your words. And I had a lot of negative thoughts that I would think about myself, about the world, about others. I had a pretty negative attitude, and things started to change for me maybe around 10 years ago when I got to a point in life where I just said, I've had enough. I don't like where I am now, which probably wasn't the right thing to say. But I knew I had to make a change. I started to gradually change and gradually open myself up to the possibility that thoughts become things, words create reality, and that kind of thing. Now I absolutely am like the opposite end of the spectrum, where I'm just, words are just everything. I'm constantly mindful of the words I'm saying to myself, the words that I'm saying to others, because I really think it does shape your reality. And taking it to the topic of parenting and dealing with your kids, it's so powerful when you tell your kid, you're such a great kid, I love you so much, versus, you're such a little liar, or, that's so powerful because, it carries with, you can just say that one time and it can stick with a child for a very long time, if not for the rest of their life. Um, so it's definitely a big topic with me.
Yes, thank you for saying that. And all those topics, I made like a little list here, and all those topics are on the list, like labels and discussions, what you let your kids hear, what you let them, how you speak to them. We learned that words have vibration. So not only do they carry energy, but they hold a certain vibration. So there's certain words that are lower vibration and higher vibration, and people will let you know how they feel when you're speaking to them. I remember when my daughter was little, she was like probably 3, and something was happening, and it was I wasn't yelling. I wasn't yelling at her, but I saw her go like this, and she was like moving back, and first of all, I was so offended. I was like mortified. I'm like, I've never hit her. I've never punished them. I still haven't. But I was like, why is she doing that? And it made me look at myself and think, well, what type of energy am I bringing to this conversation? Like, I might not be raising my voice, but I must be doing something that's causing her to feel fearful of me or unsure of, what my next move is, what I'm going to do or how I'm going to act. So the very first time that happened, right away I took a look at myself and I said, oh my God, that is not my intention for her to feel uncomfortable. What's a better way for me to say what I need to tell her? So starting to look at myself, and then, I think I've mentioned this before, but we kind of became like the mindfulness police, a couple times as the kids got older, I would teach them that Deepak Chopra teaches that your cells are eavesdropping on you so they can hear you. So I teach not only how to speak to others, but how you speak about yourself and what you say to yourself. And, I hear people all the time saying, I can't stand this, I can't stand that. And I would, teach the girls, I would say, okay, that's affecting your legs, that's affecting your knees. What are you saying, right? Like, what are you saying right now? Is there a better way that you might describe what you're feeling? Just because you can actually affect your physical being with that. But before I get into any of that, Heather, I want to just hear from you and get some insight. I know it's hard to sit there. I think when we're so passionate about these topics, we could probably talk for days about it. So it's all yours.
You're funny. Sit on the edge of your seat. I'm in mindful practice right now of I was listening to this. I don't even know who I was listening to, honestly, but they were saying that we need to be present in conversations and not be thinking about what we want to say while the person's talking. So I'm really focusing in on what you guys are saying, so I don't think about what I'm going to say next. So
it's okay.
And it's actually been kind of cool.
There's time for pause. I like that. I've been studying that too. That's why I actually make notes and everything, because I want to make sure that I can hear you guys and then remember what I was going to maybe talk about, because I know it's hard to do that, right? To be present and not react or respond.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, the biggest thing for me with mindful language is I want to remind people to keep the foundation of it too, in the sense of, yes, words hold vibration, and yes, but we are also communicators of those words. So it's really, really important to be checked into our own energy. Just like you guys said, just like you said, Tina, just like you said, Eric, it's our energy that we're bringing to it as well. And I actually believe that the energy that we bring to the story, to the words, creates more of the experience than the actual quote-unquote word. So you could have... there's a blue sky. There's blue skies. There's a blue sky. There's a blue sky. Like, there's all, it's all the same words, right? And yet we have different levels of understanding of what we're talking about that blue sky. So, I'm the first to say that I'm not the best at holding back profanity, although I did for 25 years with other people's children, but not my own for whatever reason. And it's funny because if I say something, it just, you know, my son doesn't think anything of it. But if my husband says something, which is really rare, like maybe 2 times, like, damn it or something, you know, like, all of a sudden he's mocking it up because it's so, the energy behind it is very different than the energy behind it with me. And so that's been part of my, you know, and I'm not saying that you should or shouldn't swear, like, it is what it is in my world. But there's an energy that takes place that he picks up on instantly because it's the same words and they're just conveyed differently. And so I think that if we are mindful of our energy behind it, so we are actually teaching them how to communicate what they're really feeling in their heart and match that to the energy of the word, that's where I think we will be able to be in alignment with what we're saying and what we're feeling at the same time. And I think that that's really the key, because it's really important to have that energy lined up with what you're saying and doing, because I do believe that it's not really our intention to hurt people. And, you know, to say things, I mean, I said something to a family member the other day and I was like, oh, that wasn't the right thing to say. And I instantly went back to like, okay, that was not my intention. My intention was X, Y, Z, and explained to him the situation. And, you know, we worked it out. But, you know, it happens to all of us. And I think that just being in tune with it, that that was not my intention to hurt his feelings. And yet, you know, again, which is a whole nother story, is empowering ourselves and our children in that moment, that nobody has the power to hurt your feelings. They can say something really mean, rude, disrespectful, and you have the choice in that moment to say, I don't accept that, that's not who I am. So we are empowering them, because later on down the road, we want them to have an empowered space, not a victim space of he hurt me, she did that, and, you know, creating a bunch of drama in the world. But that's like a whole nother
I know,
story.
I was going to say that's like a whole nother. Actually, that's another workshop of mine, mindful reactions and emotions. Yeah, that's a whole nother topic. But I like that you said that. You know, so when we're talking about like what we say, you know, and especially specifically to parenting. You know, we teach that how to speak, you know, say what you do want, right? So that's very important in our house. Say what you do want so that you can communicate properly what it is you're focused on and get in return, you know, the behavior, the action, or the communication that you're looking for. And, you know, I did a Google Hangout with kids in the house on toddlers and tantrums, you know, and one of the things that I didn't enjoy about that was the fact that the word tantrum is so related to toddlers and possibly teenagers. But everybody has them. I mean, everybody of every age. So, I mean, I've seen 7-year-olds have them. I've seen 40-year-olds have them. So people have them, and I think tantrums.
I had one.
Yeah, me too. I think they're just, you know, they're emotions spilling out of you, I would rather call it. But, you know, I was saying on that show, imagine, you know, how new parents feel when they get this little baby and they have this little infant and they meet some, like a parent, right, who has a kid. And, you know, parents always like to use the term, just wait, and like, you know, just wait till your toddler does this, just wait till you, right? And there's this, you know, negative labeling of what's to come or what we should expect or what's going to happen at a certain age. And I remember saying, imagine if we said, you know, words about, you know, toddlers, or let's say any human, that's like glorious, amazing, radiant, you know, passionate, innovative, creative, you know, energetic, you know, instead of saying like I have a really wild child, you can say my child is so energetic, you know, they like to move and they have so much energy. Like there's just so many different ways to say something. If we're mindful, are we coming from a negative place or a positive place? You know, are we coming from a place of love, or are we coming from a place of fear? Right? So I think that it would be so powerful to change the way that we think and change the way that we speak and what we say to our children. A couple years ago, I was studying Brene Brown's work. Are you guys familiar with Brene Brown? And she teaches a lot about shame and everything like that. And she was teaching, what's the difference between, like, for instance, shame and guilt, and how we don't realize that we could be shaming someone. So I remember she was talking about a story about her daughter, and she was saying, there's a big difference. I want to make sure that I get this right. There's a big difference between saying, oh, look at my, okay, let's just say you're saying it to the child, like, oh, you've made such a big mess, right? That's different than saying you're a really messy child. Because one, you're talking about the behavior, and one, you're talking about the person. So the difference between shame and guilt is, I feel bad for what I did. I feel bad. I might have done a wrong thing. Shame is, I am a bad person. And I think a lot of times parents don't realize, because like you say, Heather, it's not their intention to hurt their child, but I think that's not enough nowadays, to say they didn't mean to, they didn't mean to hurt them. I think it's time for people to learn that their words really, really, really carry a lot of power. So if you call your child messy, or you call your child, like you said, Eric, a liar, or, they're going to internalize that, and they actually then realistically have to live up to your label. That's another show. But it's different if you would say, like, oh, it's a big mess, there's things all over the table or something like that, right? And then you could say something like, do you want my help to clean it up? Or I'm so glad you had fun with all your art, but we're going to eat now. Or you could come in and say, look at this mess, look at you, you always leave your stuff all over. There's such a difference in how you approach somebody, right?
Right.
And what you say to them in the scenario can really change. So, you say to to your child, like, my child is really shy, he's really shy. You've labeled them and categorized them, in a place that they don't belong, because I don't even believe in that word. I don't believe in the word shy. I'm not a fan of the word whining. Heather, we were just talking about that earlier. A lot of even parenting experts and people talk about whining. I mean, I've never said to my kid, why are you whining? I've looked at them and said, I hear you. I hear that you need something from me. Can you tell me, is there a better way for us to talk about it? Like, I hear you, and I hear that you have a need that's not being met.
Right.
Whining is just something parents say, I think, to dismiss behavior that they're not comfortable with, and they don't know what to do about it. Right, Heather? We were just talking about that earlier.
Yeah, I mean, and I think, again, it's just been passed down from generation to generation. This is what we say, this is what we do, and I personally, from watching so many children for so many years, and parents, what I've realized is again, when I go back to saying it's not their intention, it doesn't mean that we just make that as an excuse. It's more along the lines of, if it's not your intention, let's get clear with what your intention is, and let's get the skills and tools you need to convey that intention to everybody. So if your intention is not to hurt your child, then here's some tools and skills that you can slide in. So if you're in the space of, you come in a messy room, think in your mind first before you want to say, oh my gosh, you made such a big mess. Think about yourself in that moment and with your boss or your friend, and they came into your office and said, your office is a disaster. You are always such a mess. And you put yourself into that space and you go, God, that really wouldn't work with me. My intention is that this mess gets cleaned up, my kid feels a sense of responsibility for it, and also a sense of cleanup for himself, taking care of himself. So in that moment I go, gosh, we got a mess here. What can we do? What can we do? Do you need some help? Are you on this on your own? Like, I'm following your lead, whatever you need for right now. And again, that's a different space than most parents in that space, because it also takes a little bit more energy to be in that space, to actually think through what you're wanting. And it really comes down to, in any situation, what am I wanting? If you have a kid that's a liar, and instead of saying you're a liar, what am I wanting? I'm wanting this child to be able to feel trustworthy to me, to communicate with me without feeling like he's going to get in trouble or punished, and to have a really good way to communicate so that we can get both our needs met. That's what I'm wanting. So that's going to detour me from using the word liar, because I know that's not going to work, because if I went into my office and my boss said, "You're a liar," I'd say, "Thank you very much, I'm out of here." Like, so I'm not a liar. And now we're in the space of I have to defend myself that I'm not a liar and or believe that I am, one of the two. Like, you're going to pick one way or the other. So,
Yes.
yeah, I don't even know where I was going with that.
No,
I don't even know where I was going with that.
No, I like that, what you said about that. Eric, I want to give you a chance to respond, but you sparked a memory of mine. I recently came across a quote of Gandhi that he talked about when his grandson lied to him, right? And he actually asked him this question. He said, "What about me wasn't safe enough, for him or for you to trust me with the truth," right?
Right.
So I think that, we do live in such a different time now where we are in a situation where people are starting to understand that we're raising little humans, and we are needing to speak to them in a different way, generationally speaking. Like you said, Heather, people didn't do that before. They didn't acknowledge their children's feelings. They didn't, they didn't really care what the child felt. So now if we're living in a space of we care what everybody in our family thinks, and we care how they feel, and we care what happens, and we care how we exist as a family, then that allows you to sort of start learning to take some time to understand that, how you speak actually has some effect on each other in the home.
Right.
Eric, I'll leave it to you. We've been kind of talking.
So you know what? One thing I get asked a lot by parents is just the question of, I think a lot of parents get it, So if there's a world of difference between telling your kid, you're always so messy, your room's always such a mess, versus something more positive, right? So the question is, how do you get out of that that bad habit? Because that's really, to me, that's just all it is. It's just something, your practiced way of being, your practiced way of speaking. So how do you get out of that, right? Because those thoughts can keep coming up. And for me, I think the way out of it is to practice the opposite. So if you have a negative thought or something less than positive, then just take a minute, take a half second to just pause and figure out a way to reframe it. And I think it's just something you practice at, something that you can get better at over time, because I think it's kind of an exciting time, because there's studies now that show that when you practice a different behavior, or when you practice thinking a different thought, your brain makes different, what do they call it, like the neural plasticity, right? Your brain makes a new connection when you teach yourself to reframe something negative to a positive thought. And I think that's very powerful. I think where people get frustrated is the fact that it does take practice, and it takes practice. It takes effort. It's like anything else. If you're learning how to play tennis, it's going to take a while for you to knock the ball into the far left corner every single time, right? But you get out there and you practice it every time, every night. Then eventually, you're going to be hitting that ball in the back left corner every time, right? And so I think it's the same thing with this. And so to parents who may be wondering, how do I get out of these bad habits? That's my answer. Practice it. Take a step back, give yourself a second or two to pause, and just consider, how can I reframe this thought into something more positive and something more empowering for your kid.
Yes, and I think that, for us who are the first people that our children learn language around, we have a very big responsibility to learn about our language. And I think like you said, we are living in a wonderful time where we can learn about it. There's ways that we can advance and grow and, you know, learn that if something's not going right in our family, or if something doesn't feel comfortable, or if people are not being kind to each other, we can really kind of look at ourselves and be like, I wonder how I could shift this, and I wonder how I could lead everybody to the possibility of something, you know, more peaceful and something that honors everybody. I mean, for the people, especially, you know, in your family where you live together, you know, you spend a lot of time together, and it really matters how you guys interact. You know, for us, one of the other techniques that I wanted to bring up, I think a lot of people have heard about it, but I don't think people do it very often, and it's something we work very hard in our family to remind each other is, you know, I statements versus you statements. You know, when we're upset and we believe that it's everybody else's, you know, fault for why we're upset or what happened, you know, we tend to talk about the other person. So, you know, I try to remind all of us and myself to speak about myself, right? So in any type of situation, instead of saying, you know, you did this and you were wrong and it's your fault and you're the person and you're being mean, you know, the ability to be able to step back and actually say, this is how I'm feeling. And I know it's hard to do, especially in the moment, but once you practice, it does get easier, I promise. You say things like, I'm feeling really uncomfortable with what I'm hearing, or I'm feeling really uncomfortable with how you're speaking, or, you know, so instead of blaming or saying, you can say how it's making you feel. It takes a lot of huge amount of effort to do that. Huge amount of effort to shine a light on yourself and not. It's very easy to notice what everyone else does. It's very easy to analyze and judge and tell them, actually. It's much harder to look at our own behavior and our own selves. But if we can start owning our feelings and emotions and teaching our kids how to do that, you know, like they could say, I'm feeling really scared. You know, I'm feeling really scared right now. Or, you know, I'm feeling too upset. I can't talk about this right now. Can we take some time? You know, who talks like that, right? I mean, we don't hear that on TV. We don't hear that in movies, right? It's not commonplace to accept your own feelings instead of blaming the other person, right?
Exactly. So I've been interested lately in Ho'oponopono. Have you guys, either of you, heard of that?
Yeah, I like that prayer.
So there's the prayer that's I love you, I'm sorry, forgive me, thank you.
The whole concept of it, yeah.
But the concept behind it is that you take 100% responsibility for everything that's going on in your world. And that maybe that sounds like a lot, 100% responsibility for everything going on in my world. But once you make that shift and actually take that on, at least within your family, you can do that at least within your family, and be able to take on, okay, this person or my child is feeling a certain way about something. If I can take responsibility, then I have the power to do something about it. And I think that that's very powerful.
It is powerful, and it gives us our power back. Heather, what did you want to add about that?
Well, I think it's something that we don't actually teach at a very young age. We teach at a very young age to give our power to other people. In other words, and I know this from owning a preschool for years, and I've watched it and I've actually done it. So I've actually kind of changed my ways over the years too. But it's when another kid bites another kid, and you get them together, and the idea is that you say, oh, that hurt me, I don't like it when you bite me, and then the other kid says, I'm sorry, or, well, you did this, and the other kid said, but you hurt me, and now I'm sad, and all of this drama, when the very clear picture a lot of times, and what I realized in watching this was that we were giving each other our power away. Like, you hurt me and I can't recover from it. You did this to me and now I'm sad. And so when we at a young age can say, look, you made a mistake, you bit him. He didn't like it. Let's not do it again. If I was you, I wouldn't bite that. I'd bite food. I bite food. I bite whatever. But you know, I mean, the point is that we kind of skip over all of that, so that as an adult, we aren't reading this prayer going, oh, we have to take responsibility for ourselves, because we actually aren't teaching responsibility for ourselves in that moment at a young age. We are giving responsibility to others for our feelings, emotions, actions, yada yada. So I think it's really important that, you know, every moment doesn't have to be quote unquote a teachable moment as a parent. It can be just what it is, you know. He pushed him on the playground because he wanted a toy. If you want a toy, the best way to get the toy is to ask him for it, if that's what you, and honoring him. If he says, no, I don't want you to have my toy, then we say, okay, can I have a turn later? If he says no, then that's it. That's his toy, you know. But we get into these social norms that have been passed down from generation to generation of, oh, well, that's not going to make him happy. I mean, I don't know how many times I hear on the playground, you're going to make him sad if you don't share your toy. You're going to make him unhappy. Do you want to be responsible for him being sad? And all I can do is like, are you kidding me right now? Like, I have these moments where I'm like, there's a lot of pressure. What's that?
Oh, I was going to say all that playground guilt.
Yeah, it's a lot of pressure for a 3-year-old that's unnecessary. Look, he doesn't want you to play with his toy, so be it. Sometimes I don't want people playing with my toys. I'm not willing to share my car with one of my good friends because they're not a good driver. So no, you're not getting my car. And I don't feel bad about it at all. Like, at all. So I think that if we start at a young age with like having these emotions, having these feelings, and giving them the tools and the words, the problem, like you said, Eric and Tina, is that we as parents don't have those tools and strategies yet and words in that moment. And I think even as simple as, like you said, Eric, are to pause, like to take a breath, and mine is always take a deep breath and work this out in my head for a minute. But we're so in a very instantaneous society. We're like, fix it now, do this now, we've got to address this now. If we don't address them not sharing now at 3 years old, they're going to be, you know, in jail, and they're going to be terrible people. They'll never share anything. Like, we create this whole story when it's really just a kid moment. And being with over 30,000 kids, you'd be surprised how many kid moments happen all the time. Like, as in a preschool, there was at least, I don't know, 300 to 400 incidents a day. Wow. A day, you know, between he did this, she did that, he won't give me this, he won't give me that, like, you know. And we had to work it out in our school where they learned how to communicate with each other to get their needs met and keep us out of it, unless, of course, it was something detrimental or really, you know, escalated too far, whatever. But the general bits, and you know, I think that that's something we need to start really, really young, is taking responsibility for our own feelings, our own emotions, and our own moments in conversations with each other.
Yeah, and I think the thing that I feel strongest about is that I really am just so passionate about inspiring people to stop calling each other names. They don't want their kids to do it, but parents do it. Parents will call their children names, label their children as certain behaviors. Like you said, everybody's saying, you know, this person is a liar. Like, you call your child a liar. I mean, if somebody on the street called your child that, you would probably knock them one. But parents are willing to do it. Parents are willing to call these things to their children. And even just saying you're mean is very hurtful. I think that, you know, a lot of words we hear in parenting these days. What do we hear? Like, parents say, like, don't whine, don't be a tattletale. So many things. I mean, I think we could just delete those from, like, you know, human vocabulary. I think it's time to elevate our vocabulary and pick some new words. And I don't know if we want to get them off Wikipedia or just invent them. But we need some new words, you know. I mean, I've never said that. If my kid comes and tells me something, I don't say don't be a tattletale on your sister. I say, wow, what's going on? You know, I get curious. I become aware, like, oh, these kids, you know, who don't have fully developed brains and frontal lobes, wow, they need my help, you know. I'm going to have to, like, step up my game and help them. So I get curious. I ask questions, you know, why are you feeling that way? And, you know, what did you see? And, you know, do you think that there's, you know, some way that I can help? And, things like that. But asking questions, I interviewed a woman by the name of Nyurka who has a book called Supreme Influence, and she teaches amazing things about the effects of your language on yourself, on your own life, on others. And it's just so interesting that people just don't ask questions. People are just, like you said, Heather, so fast, so quick to react, so quick to assume. I was raising kids who at 3 and 5 were saying to me, Mommy, don't assume. I taught them really early what assuming was. And so if you get very used to serving your kid something or doing something for your kid that they always needed you to do, and then I had a 5-year-old saying, Mommy, you assumed I needed a jacket, but I wasn't cold. And I thought to myself, she needs me to ask her. She's old enough now where she needs me to ask her. When they're little, you just put their little jacket on, you put their little booties on. At some point, you have to learn to communicate with these beings that you created and and the best way is to start asking questions. What do you need? How do you feel? What's a better way we could have said that? Heather, I totally agree with you with not giving your power away. We can talk about the book, The 4 Agreements, and, learn about not taking what people say personally, but also letting them know that they have said something, that might not be comfortable, that maybe there's a better way that we can talk to each other, and it sort of leads us to respect, right? What does everybody say? That's another word I want to delete, disrespectful. You're being disrespectful. That's a big one for me. Oh my God, I could probably talk about that for an hour.
Yeah.
I think it's disrespectful to say you're being disrespectful. At some point you can just say, you could say I'm feeling uncomfortable with what I'm hearing, and wow, you must be really feeling some crazy, not crazy, that's not good. Intense, I don't know, strong emotions regarding that. There's so many ways that we can exist and speak with each other, right? Don't you guys think?
I think during those moments when I can't think of anything else to say, right? I'm on the verge of saying it's so disrespectful or whatever it is.
Right.
The thing that I will say instead is, what's going on? What's going on? As just having that concern, or like you said, that just a curiosity, and then give your kid a chance to express themselves about whatever the feeling is, whatever the disconnection may be happening. But yeah, you're right. The word disrespectful is a really big one because I think a lot of times, and unfortunately, I think a lot of parents just don't give that consideration that you're not just commenting on something that it's not just an observation, especially with kids.
Right.
You're shaping you're developing their character. Maybe you say it once in their lifetime and it's not going to have much effect, but you say it twice, you say it 3 times, you say it every day, or you say it every week. It gets in there. It creeps into their self-image, into their own sense of identity of themselves. So, that's a word to definitely be very careful of. I mean,
Another one is rude. Like they're being rude.
Yeah.
First of all, you're judging somebody when you're telling them how they're being. They don't need you to tell them how they're being. They need you to hear how they're feeling. So, I like to say, a lot of parents always say to me, my child is being rude, my child is being, disrespectful, and I like to tell them, when you hear your child speaking a certain way, right? In your head, you kind of have to change the tape. You kind of have to change the dialogue, and if you're able to detach yourself from what's happening, you can kind of observe what's happening. Instead of saying, why is my child speaking to me this way, you would say to yourself, why is my child feeling this way? Like, gosh, they don't really sound very happy. They sound really upset. I wonder what's going on for them. And if you really love and care about them, you're going to become inquisitive. You're going to want to investigate that feeling instead of labeling them as like, oh, he's rude, he's in a bad mood, he's rude. Then you write them off and you have disconnected from each other, and there's, how do you later even reconnect after that?
Right. The problem is it makes it worse a lot of times. because you just further distance yourself. You increase that disconnection, and then that usually causes more disrespect, if you will. So yeah, the key there is take that second to pause, think of a way to reframe it, and give it a more positive spin, if you will.
Heather?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think about it, and I think it also needs to be elevated one more level up as far as how we're thinking. When we're in the space of thinking that somebody, our child is being disrespectful or rude, it's raising that vibration up a little bit higher in our head and remembering their greatness, that that's not who they are. They're not a rude child. Like, how many times has your child said thank you or I love you, or, you know, and the strategy that I put in place for myself is that in that space when I'm like, oh my gosh, he is sending me over the edge. Like, there are times, you know, with my own son, I'm like, oh my gosh, why are you being this way? Like, and there are moments when I go, well, that was rude, you know, in my mind, not out loud, but in my mind I go, well, that was a rude thing to do. And I'm like, oh, he's 3. He's not really a rude kid, you know, and I have a moment where I reconnect into that space of, that's not who he is. He's just having a moment right now where he wants to get his point across that he doesn't want to go outside. So there, you know, and so what I need to do in that space is to give him the tools and the words to use that are going to be able to communicate what he needs better with me. So in that moment, I may say to him, hey, Jay, listen, when you do that, Mom doesn't respond well to that, and let me explain why. It makes me, you know, and I'll have a moment where I'm like, and I lose my thought, and I'll say to him, look, if you don't want to go outside, I need you to say, I don't want to go outside, and then we can talk about it and figure out a solution. And that solution doesn't mean that we don't go outside. It doesn't mean that we, you know, don't honor what we need as well, but to have those communication moments. And I think the basis is this, the idea is that a 3-year-old, a 4-year-old, a 15-year-old is rude to begin with. Like, a 30-year-old is rude. You know, I spouted out something to a family member that was not nice. It was not nice at all, and I felt genuinely bad about it later. And I don't usually, I do my best to put all my practices in that I do with children, with adults, but it doesn't always work that way for me because I'm still learning too. But I had a moment where I said something really mean. And if he would have said to me, and he did actually, he said, that was really mean. You're just being mean. And I just thought, and all I could think of in the moment from my perspective was, I'm not a mean person. I'm actually a really nice person. Like, and then I started coming up with all these great things that I've done for him over the years to back up how I'm not mean. And so I became really defensive and really puffed up about it and like, oh, you think I'm mean? Like, and then I started like thinking of all the things that he's mean about. So it created this whole space of ridiculousness where he could have said, you know, Heather, that's not like you. You don't really ever talk to me that way. Like, is something going on, or, you know, what happened? Like, are you not liking what I'm saying? That would have been a whole different space. And that's what I do my best with our child and other children is, that's not who you are, so something must be going on. How can I help you? What do you need? What are you wanting? And I put the ball in their court. And even as a child that can't speak a full language yet, have a full vocabulary, it gets them in a forward momentum thinking of, what am I wanting? And it gets them out of the space of blame and anger and frustration. So, you know, that's my biggest tip and tool is, in the moment, remember that their greatness, and then ask them, like, this isn't like you. What's going on? How can I help? What do you need?
Right.
That kind of thing.
Right. I think asking questions, and I think, but if we can, you know, I urge people to step away from those labels and from using them, you know, because I think parents are just passing them down, and we need to stop this, you know, circle of unawareness and raise our emotional intelligence, you know. So if we're driving in the car and we talk about other drivers, the kids are listening. If we go to a restaurant and we are not a fan of how the waiter is speaking, you know. I would never say to my kids, well, that waiter's rude. I've never said that. I have literally not used that word because I don't feel comfortable with it. Instead, because I'm observing and because I'm, you know, maybe hyper aware in this sense, I would say like, gosh, they must be having a hard day. I wonder what's going on with them, you know. Or even if I'm not comfortable and they can't switch it or we can't connect, you know, I would get another waiter, but I would never say to my kids that person was rude. I would say that person must be having a really hard day, and you know, but we do need someone who can, you know, who we can communicate with, like. But until we stop labeling people and calling each other names, we can't expect children to do it. We can't teach them what we're not willing to do. So I think we've come up with some, you know, really good tips and techniques. And I know that it's challenging. I know it's not easy. It's not easy, especially when we're trained to react in a certain way, especially when we've been raised a certain way. You know, if nobody has talked to us, sorry, I said talked and spoken. I said talking. If nobody has spoken to us or talked with us in a loving way or given us compassion or empathy or respect, we often don't know how to give it, you know? So, I mean, we are pioneers in understanding that communication with our children starts with us and with us actually learning new methods and new ways, like you said, Eric, creating new neural pathways and just, you know, helping each other, you know? So all three of us are available to help other parents. You know, we've all been working on it, studying it, and we are all available to help guide each other and basically hold hands to usher each other into a new world, you know, one that we all really would like to be a part of. Sometimes we just don't think it's possible because we don't see enough people living it. But I believe it's possible to be kinder, to be gentler, to be aware of what we say to people. And you know, it's like you said, Heather, you know, 24/7, no, nobody's perfect. It's not about being perfect, but if we have awareness, we might go back to that person like you did, your family member, and say, you know, that didn't feel good, and, you know, I wasn't really aligned when I said that, you know, and this is what I really wanted to say, or this is what I was feeling, and, you know, that ability to reconnect after that disconnect. So did you guys have anything that you guys wanted to say to add to it? I think we could talk about this for quite a few hangouts.
You know, I think there is one more item that I think may be helpful for anyone to look at, and that is just to take a look at the underlying assumptions that we have about children in general. Yes. Because I think as a society, as a culture, and I have to be careful before labeling everyone in a culture in this way, I think that there are some anti-child attitudes that exist that sort of see children as second-class citizens, people to be talked down to. They're looked at as brats. They're looked at as spoiled or disrespectful. And I think there's an assumption there that that if challenged and looked at in a new way, can be very, very helpful. So if you see your children as equals, as not being spoiled brats, as actually unique, divine expressions of the universe, right? Sort of elevate their status instead of looking at them as people to be looked down on. I think that's something that can be very helpful.
I love that. That's beautiful. I totally agree.
And I love your idea too, Tina. I would like to start a movement with you, Tina, to get rid of a lot of these words entirely from our vocabularies and start seeing if we can choose new words, choose new vocabularies, and practice at it.
Yes, I love that. Let's continue to do that. I have a list of words that I'm actually working on for my book, and you know, it's a big circle with a line through it. Like these are just words we don't have to use. You know, I have two girls who are 9 and 11 who do not use the words that I'm going to say just for the purpose of this platform. For instance, stupid or idiot.
Oh yeah.
Okay, my kids do not use those words. In fact, if they hear it, they mute it, or because it's in every, like, you know, everything. It's everywhere. But if they want to tell me that it's in there, I say, oh, why were you muting it? They say, oh, they said the word stew, but they do not use it in their daily life, even though they have heard it. They're not fans of it. So I think that there are these words, Eric, that we just don't need. There's no benefit. You can't use it. You cannot use that word in a sentence nicely, Like, I love you. You're just so you can't. There's no beneficial use for them. So, yeah, let's just come up with some new vocabulary, some new words. We always say we upgrade our phones, we upgrade our technology. Let's upgrade our vocabulary and our minds and have fun doing it. Heather, did you have any final thoughts?
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think that it will naturally, I think those words will naturally fall off once you experience the feeling of not using them anymore, if that makes sense. So, it's not even a word that we say don't use because we just don't use it, right?
Right.
And I'm sure, Tina, in your home, you don't go around and say don't use that word. You just don't use it, and nobody uses it, right? So it's not it doesn't have any energy behind it. But I think that, to Eric's point too.
Yeah, people like you're saying, people have to see some benefits. They actually have to do this a little and then see some benefit. Like, gosh, people are feeling better. People are talking nicer. People are, using different types of words and feeling different. They have to see some benefit. I urge people to try it. I'm sorry, what were you saying?
Well, and to be aware of it in the moment, too. Like, when I said something that wasn't nice to my family member, I immediately felt bad about it. To address it in that moment, I think oftentimes as parents, we often look at it as, oh, we can't look like we aren't doing it right. And, I'm very vulnerable to my son that I do things wrong all the time. The goal is that let's mend it and get back into a good space together. And to Eric's point, as far as like rude and disrespectful and all those kind of things that we quote unquote call our kids, I have to remind a lot of people that that is not our intention when we start off either. You don't hear parents saying that their infant is a brat. Or, I mean, none of the parents I've ever hung out with that. I mean, I'm sure there's probably somebody, but people don't say that their kid's a brat or being rude because he wants to be breastfed.
That doesn't last long, though. Beyond the booties and the pacifiers and the blankies, that doesn't last long, though.
Yeah, exactly, and that's the point. That's the point exactly. Is that again? I believe in a good space, and if we can hone back into that space, and maybe it means as a parent, if you're in the space, I'm going to call my kid a brat. You flash back to the time when you were holding him as an infant and thinking, this is the brightest light on this planet. This is the best thing that's ever happened. This is the best amazing kid in the world. Every parent has 1,000,001 dreams for their kids when they come out and see their eyes. So if it means holding that space, going back to that space when you feel the need or urge to have that moment, because like you guys said, it does create new neural pathways, and you're firing all those neurons, and it's going to create a whole different experience, and that is practice. That's 25 years of practice to get me where I'm at now, and there are still, again, moments where I go, oh my gosh, like, give me a break, and I have to check back in with myself. So, but it's also really being a little gentle.
Yeah. But what's really good?
Being a little gentle.
Yes, gentle with ourselves too, and with each other as we learn it. Because the truth is, I want my kids to see me mess up. I want them to see, like you said, us being vulnerable. I tell them all the time, I don't know, or mommy goofed, or mommy was tired, or parents never said that though back in the day, right? Like our parents didn't say that really, or our grandparents or previous generations didn't really own up to their participation. I mean, I say that all the time, and they'll catch me too. You'll see once you start modeling it and living it, your kids will catch you, And there's times that my kids will remind me, like, is there a better way you wanted to say that, Mom? And it kind of becomes fun. I mean, we help each other. We're all learning and growing. We're not like us versus them. We're on the same team, and we're after the same goal. And, if we hear somebody talking like that to us who's on our team, you know, we reach out and extend a hand and say, you know, what's up with you, you know? So this has been great. I love it. I don't want to go too long because I want people to watch it. And I know people don't have a lot of time, so we will reconnect and reconvene on the next topic. And I thank you guys for your time as always. It's always a beautiful discussion, and I'm happy that I'm on this journey with you guys.
Yay!
Thank you, Tina. Thank you, Heather.
So we'll see you.
Thank you guys too.
We'll see you again soon. And if anybody has any questions, they can reach all three of us through social media or our websites. And when we post this live, feel free to reach out if you have questions or a desire to learn a new way to be. Bye, guys.
Bye.